Not long ago, the Archangel Peter decided to take a brief break, something unheard of in his eternal existence. For all of eternity, he had been tasked with chronicling the paths of souls, never once taking a moment off. The role of the soul chronicler is crucial in heaven, standing at the gates, the keeper of the book of souls, determining who gets entry and who is condemned, and ensuring that souls are properly assigned to bodies for reincarnation. It's a job that demands constant attention. Before stepping away, Peter left his apprentice, Saraphina, in charge. He gave her a clear set of instructions. Determining who should be allowed into heaven was straightforward. Peter had already marked the souls expected during his absence with a simple up and down arrow in the book. But the most difficult part was the other two tasks, recording the notes from the guardian angels in the field, and ensuring the souls going back into the cycle of life were placed in the right bodies. Peter stressed how important the second task was. If the souls weren't placed correctly, it could lead to disastrous consequences. Time in heaven operates differently from Earth. 1 minute in heaven equates to a decade on Earth. Peter's break, lasting about 10 minutes in Heaven Standard Time (HST), was the equivalent of a century on Earth. Saraphina, though brilliant, was known for her short attention span. The first few minutes of Peter's absence were easy enough, but soon, she became restless. She thought about her time on Earth before her ascent to heaven, the time she had been looked down upon or mistreated, simply because she was a woman. Despite the cruelty, Saraphina never sought revenge or held any ill will. She believed that if those men understood what it was like, they might change. The thought lingered in her mind. Then, she had an idea. In those next 2 minutes of HST, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She swapped the souls of men into female bodies and vice versa, believing that this could somehow help fix the imbalance between the sexes. It wasn't out of malice, but a genuine desire to change things for the better. For the next minute, Saraphina observed the changes as the souls began to grow up, unaware of the unintended consequences. By the time Peter returned, these displaced souls had lived for 10 to 20 years. Saraphina hadn't recorded her actions in the Book of Souls, thinking she had done something positive without anyone knowing. But as the saying goes, no one can play God except God. It took Peter only a couple of minutes in HST to sense something was wrong. The reports from the guardian angels in the field showed strange patterns on Earth. Women, particularly in the United States, were becoming more assertive and aggressive, pushing for equal rights and challenging traditional gender norms. Some women began adopting traditionally male behaviors and desires. Meanwhile, a number of men, influenced by this shift, were becoming kinder and more in touch with their emotions, even taking on roles traditionally held by women. The most surprising part? It was as if women were becoming dominant, while men became more submissive. There was an increase in homosexuality, crossdressing, and even men undergoing gender transition surgeries. Something had clearly gone awry. Peter carefully calculated the ages of those affected and soon realized that the issue began during his break. He questioned Saraphina about her watch, asking if anything unusual had occurred that wasn't recorded in the Book of Souls. He explained the situation on Earth and warned that if left unaddressed, it would lead to catastrophe. Reluctantly, Saraphina admitted to what she had done. Since her intentions had been pure, Peter was not angry with her. However, the problem still needed to be corrected. To make matters worse, the names of the affected souls, who were now called the displaced, had not been recorded in the Book of Souls. Sorting out the displaced from others, such as those simply suffering from illness or following a trend, would be nearly impossible. The only one who could recognize the displaced was Saraphina, as she was the one responsible for their displacement. It was soon decided that Saraphina, due to her unique perspective, would be sent to Earth to return the displaced souls to bodies of their original gender. She could not return to heaven until the task was completed. Saraphina wasn't given any tools to locate the displaced beyond her own angelic memory, her ability to empathically sense the emotions of others, and her power to remove souls from bodies. Typically, souls are taken out after death to be guided to Peter, but Saraphina was granted special permission from God to remove souls from their bodies before death to set the displaced right. With her task in mind, Saraphina was sent to Earth and quickly became known as the Angel of the Displaced. The first thing she noticed was the slow passage of time. Even a year felt like a century by heaven's standards. She used her time wisely, refining her angelic abilities so she could hear the emotional cries of the displaced souls. The challenge was not just locating a displaced soul, but finding another of the opposite gender to complete the exchange. Unfortunately, she could not alter their memories. Each of the displaced she encountered remembered their previous lives, knowing they were in new bodies. However, the new bodies carried residual memories that helped them adapt quickly. The transition felt right to them, like coming home after a long time away. Saraphina's skill grew, and she began correcting the problems caused by the displaced. It took some time to locate her first pair of displaced souls. Thankfully, they were a couple named Tristan and Amber. Their relationship was on the brink of collapse, but after Saraphina made the exchange, their love was reignited. Inspired by this success, Saraphina adopted the last name Swan and created a human identity for herself. She chose the name from a character in a story Tristan had written before becoming Amber. Although encouraged by the success of her first exchange, Saraphina realized that it had taken her too long to find these two souls. She estimated that hundreds of thousands of souls had been displaced. If she continued searching and exchanging them at random, it would take forever, and by the time she finished, many of them would have passed away, still trapped in the wrong gender. The cycle would never end. The potential long-term damage was unimaginable. Saraphina needed to reach more people faster. She decided to take advantage of the global communications phenomenon known as the Internet and set up a website, naming it the Soul Exchange. She believed that if those she had helped shared their stories and information on how to find her, it would encourage more of the displaced to reach out to her through the digital ether. Saraphina called upon everyone she had helped to share their experiences. She asked them to describe their lives before the exchange, how she had found them, who they had been exchanged with, and how their lives had changed afterward. And people answered her call. Here is one such story. At first sight. They say the heart is a lonely hunter, and none more so than mine. For as long as I can remember, I've been shy, withdrawn, and reluctant. Despite having above-average looks, I've always felt like something inside me was broken, as if I were inherently flawed. Talking to women is nearly impossible for me. For instance, when I'm at a party and spot someone I'd like to get to know, I usually end up on the opposite side of the room. It's as if an invisible barrier keeps me from approaching. I know, intellectually, that it's just a mental block, but it might as well be a towering wall with a moat. To me, it feels like a force beyond my control. These thoughts came easily as I stood before an exhibit at the museum. Someone once told me that I run from my pain while holding it close. Various artworks on display featured nudes by different artists, and as I gazed at them, a wave of sadness washed over me. They reminded me of what I didn't have in my own life. I sighed deeply. Isn't it better to accept your fate than to futilely fight against it? But even with that rationalization, it did little to ease the lump in my throat or the nausea in my stomach. Maybe that's just how you're supposed to feel when you realize your destiny is to walk alone forever. My thoughts were interrupted by a gentle touch on my elbow. A woman's voice behind me asked, "Isn't it strange that something so joyful and natural should evoke such sorrow?" I turned slightly to see a striking young woman. She was tall, slender, yet delicate. Her skin was almost too pale, her blonde hair too golden. There was an aura about her, something pure and uncomplicated. If I had to pick a single word to describe her, it would be angelic. What disturbed me most was how it felt like she had read my mind. "Excuse me?" I asked, caught off guard. "It's just that, you looked so sad, just now." "I'm sorry," I mumbled, starting to step away from her. My invisible barrier shot up, keeping me at a distance. "Please, don't go. Talk to me." Her request was simple, direct, and free from any pretense. Her voice was so gentle, almost musical. I fought the urge to turn and run, as I usually would. but for some reason, her voice had a calming effect on me. My heartbeat slowed, giving me the courage to stay where I was. She extended a delicate hand, introducing herself. "My name is Saraphina. I've just arrived in this area." I shook her hand, introducing myself. "It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Marcus de Reed, but my friends call me Remy. What brings you to town?" My voice, however, betrayed my anxiety. "Oh, you could say something just drew me here. It almost compelled me to come." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What a strange thing to say. Summoning the last of my courage, I asked, "Would you like to grab some coffee or something and talk?" She smiled warmly at me, a smile so bright it could light up a room. It was the kind of smile that made me feel completely at ease. For some reason, I felt safe with her. "That sounds wonderful, Remy." We walked to a small coffee shop next to the museum. I think we sat and talked for hours. What was odd, though, was that even though she was attractive, I didn't feel that kind of attraction toward her. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this comfortable around anyone. Saraphina seemed to understand me, the real me. At one point, Saraphina asked if I knew of a club called Sanctuary. I did, though it wasn't a place I frequented. My bachelor friends and I usually went to other spots. Sanctuary was more of a dance club. To my surprise, Saraphina asked if I would meet her there at midnight that night. It was the last thing I expected, and not something I would have suggested on my own. But I agreed. Before we parted ways, she took my hand, squeezed it, and whispered, "Have faith, Remy." Her simple gesture touched me in a way I couldn't explain. As I watched her walk away, a wave of emotion hit me, and tears I couldn't hold back began to fall. At first sight, a single tear streaks down my cheek as I reflect on the events of earlier today. It's 12:30 a.m., and the ache in my gut twists painfully, the result of being stood up. Everything I had believed about Saraphina now feels like a cruel lie. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything more, destiny once again. I had passed up a chance to go out with my friends, all to come to this place. The air buzzed with frantic energy as people danced, jostled, and chatted excitedly. Soft murmurs of light romantic connections could be heard all around. As usual, I felt like an outsider, observing life from the outside. I lifted my eyes to the mirrored wall before me, seeing the stranger I was. He looked like any average, socially acceptable man, taller than most, with dark blonde hair, clean cut. But the brooding expression on his face hinted that something deeper was going on beneath the surface. A flicker of movement caught my attention, pulling my gaze away from my self-inspection. It was a beautiful woman sitting at the bar, absent-mindedly playing with her hair, tossing it back and forth, fluffing it, tousling it. There was something intoxicating about the way women with long hair could do that. I couldn't help but stare at her, though her beauty seemed overshadowed by a look of boredom. I turned to get a better view. I couldn't fathom why someone so stunning would appear bored. Other men around the room were also eyeing her. She was by far the most beautiful woman here. Though she was sitting, I could tell she was short, perhaps 5 feet 2 inches. She had dark features, likely of Italian descent. Even from across the room, I could see her dark brown eyes, which matched her thick, brunette hair that cascaded down her back to her waist. She wore a short skirt and a tight top that hugged her slender, lithe figure. Her breasts were on the smaller side, but the effect was almost elfin. Most men would probably prefer someone taller with fuller curves, but not me. This woman was everything I desired and more. Even as these simple truths settled within me, I knew I would never speak a word to her. My familiar shyness rose, a suffocating barrier between me and what might be the girl of my dreams. I sighed deeply, letting the despair wash over me like a heavy cloak. Then, the woman turned her head toward me. I instantly felt the urge to run, as though she had heard my sigh and was searching for its source. Her dark eyes met mine, and I couldn't look away. Time seemed to stop. I felt as though I was falling into those eyes, more drawn to her than I had ever been to anyone. Suddenly, everything around me blurred, and I felt faint. A hand at my back jolted me back to reality. A male voice asked, "Are you okay? You almost fell off your seat." What was he talking about? Why was I sitting? The last thing I remembered was standing, staring at the dark-haired woman across the room. As my vision began to clear, I found myself on the other side of the room. "I'm okay." "Thanks," I said, but my voice sounded strange, higher and softer than normal. I tried to clear my throat and speak again. "I'm okay." My voice was still an octave higher than usual. Now fully aware of the change, I blinked twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I was sitting on a bar stool, looking across the club at myself. I stared in disbelief as or the man I had been, gazed back at me, his face filled with shock. I looked down at myself. I was wearing the same tight top and short skirt that the woman had been wearing. Somehow, in some impossible way, I had switched bodies with the object of my desire. A hand still rested on my back, supporting me. I turned my head to see who it was. As I did, I felt the weight of thick hair cascading over my shoulders. The sheer volume of it tugged at my scalp, pulling at the base of my neck. It was one of the other men who had been eyeing her. I shivered, realizing just how vulnerable I was. I placed my hand on his to push it away. He didn't let go, misinterpreting my gesture as an invitation to hold his hand. "What's your hurry, beautiful? Can I buy you a drink?" He was looking into my eyes, and I could feel the intensity of his desire for me. The depth of his longing sent a shiver through my body. Another voice came from behind me. "She's with me. I would appreciate it if you'd leave her alone." It was my voice, or, more accurately, my old voice. I quickly turned around, my long hair swinging with the motion, cascading over my shoulder and brushing against my chest. And there she was, the owner of the body I now inhabited, standing protectively, using my body to shield herself. The other man hesitated, looking sheepish. Sorry, man. You were across the room, staring at her just like I was. I just assumed." He didn't finish his thought, instead opting to avoid further embarrassment and walk away. That left us alone, trapped in each other's bodies, forced to confront the strange situation. My body spoke first. Let's get a booth so we can talk privately." Her voice, with its familiar tone and inflection, sent chills down my spine. It was eerie to hear myself speak, moving and talking as if nothing had changed, but not under my conscious control. For a moment, dizziness and disorientation overcame me. "Yeah, that's probably a good idea," I responded, my voice perfectly mimicking hers. "Otherwise, people might think we're crazy." I stood up, now standing next to my body. I think she heard me gasp when I realized how short I was now. I was looking straight at her chest. She looked down at me with a sympathetic smile. "I know. It's wild being suddenly so tall, too." In the blink of an eye, I was surrounded by a crowd of people all taller than I was. I couldn't see over or around anyone. I had to rely on her to navigate through the crowd and find a quiet spot. She led me to an empty booth. I found it unsettling how naturally I moved in her high heels. My body moved and swayed with an effortless feminine grace that I could only assume mirrored the way she walked. The sensation of walking in her body was so foreign. It took all of my concentration not to lose my balance. Every part of my body seemed to move in sync, but at times in different directions. Even though the swells on my chest were modest, they jiggled with each step. I could feel my long hair swinging back and forth against my back. I felt so light, like I could float away. It was overwhelming, and the lack of resistance between my legs was difficult to grasp. We both slid into the booth, she on one side, and I on the other. We sat in silence for a moment, both probably grappling with the same maddening sensations of being in someone else's body. Without a word, she reached out with my body, gently touching my face, my cheek. I understood the impulse, a need to confirm that this wasn't a dream by physically touching my own body. Unfortunately, my arms were too short now to reciprocate. In the end, I reached out to touch the hand that had caressed my cheek. "This is wild," she said, breaking the silence. "To say the least," I responded, still reeling. She lowered her hand, extending it to introduce herself. "Hi. I'm Lily. And you are?" I had to scoot forward on the bench to take her hand. The space between us felt oddly vast, and the edge of the table rose only to my chest now, instead of my abdomen like it usually did. Leaning forward, I tried to hide the surprise on my face as my breasts pressed against the edge of the table. I placed my hand into hers, and the difference in size was breathtaking. Remy. Cool name. How did this happen to us? I don't know. This should be impossible. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone approaching the booth. It was Saraphina. Saraphina, both Lily and I said in unison. We looked back at each other, blurting out at the same time, "You know Saraphina?" Our synchronicity made us laugh out loud together. Lily gestured toward me, trying to be playful. "Ladies first." I found the gesture to be poorly timed, given the bizarre circumstances. Very funny. I was supposed to meet Saraphina here. I turned back towards Saraphina, hoping she would confirm my statement, not realizing she wouldn't recognize me in my current form. But she was gone. Really? Lily asked in surprise, her voice, my voice, sounding even more curious. I was supposed to meet Saraphina here, too. Do you know Saraphina? I just met her this afternoon. Me too. It felt like I had known her all my life. She listened to me complain about not being able to find someone to love. This is too weird. I vented to her about being so shy, about not being able to approach a woman I'm attracted to. Lily didn't seem as bothered by the body swap as I was. Instead, she was more focused on my personal problems. Why are you so shy? You're good looking and seem like a nice guy. You wouldn't have any problem. Really? You noticed? Of course. Who in this club are you attracted to? I hesitated, feeling a nervous flutter in my chest. You. Me? Yes. I felt drawn to you right away. It was almost like gravity. Then why didn't you come over to me? Why didn't you try to talk to me? It was my shyness. I thought you were either with someone, or that you'd just turn me down. Lily placed her hand gently on mine, which was still resting on the table. Darling, you shouldn't have been afraid. I would never hurt you. I came here to meet someone genuine like you. Heat flooded my face as I blushed. She had used an endearment. She really liked me for who I was. A look of sadness briefly crossed her face, and she fell silent for a moment. I hate that. People always think that, so I never get to meet anyone decent. The only ones who approach me are creeps or guys just after sex. It's so frustrating. I've often wished I could just take matters into my own hands, but then everyone thinks you're a slut, and you're worse off than before. I'm sorry, I whispered. I wish I could make it all better. There was no sound except the rhythmic beat of two hearts finding their perfect sync, two souls, incomplete, now beginning to merge. Was it the crackle of romantic energy filling the air? It's funny, Lily whispered. What is? I asked. If this never happened, we never would have spoken. You would have never approached me. You're right, unfortunately. She squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance that we were in this together. It was strange. From that point, we seemed to forget about being in each other's bodies. The problem just faded away. We were so absorbed in discovering each other that hours passed in what felt like minutes. Each word she spoke from my body made me fall deeper for her. She was the most incredible person I'd ever met. Lily was a single mother to an 11-month-old daughter named Faith. She had never married the father, who left her upon hearing about the pregnancy. She went through childbirth alone, without any support from him. Lily had been devastated, but now, after all the pain, she had the courage to try again. Here was a person who, despite all the hardships, had the strength to risk everything again. The strength to try once more. It was a courage I wanted to find for myself, to take a chance. We discovered we shared so many interests and beliefs. The most surprising thing was that we had to look past the foreign bodies we occupied to see the real person beneath. Who could have imagined that, under our skin, we were all the same? Lily was someone I genuinely liked, someone I wanted to spend a lot of time with. I'd heard it said that when you meet the one, you just know. You can feel it. I could tell Lily was the one. And by the way she looked into my eyes, I could tell she felt the same way. Lily and I were hopelessly in love with each other. "Do you want to get out of here?" she asked. We had spent so much time getting lost in each other that we completely forgot about the situation we were in. I asked, "How do we get back to our real bodies?" as we stood up from the booth. She pulled me into a tight embrace, lifting me off the ground and spinning me around in a carefree, joyful moment, the joy of finding each other. "I don't know," she replied, setting me back down. Then she kissed me, deeply. Our first kiss. I could feel all the emotion behind it, so I returned it. Our tongues met, joining as one. I could feel my body responding, and I knew hers was doing the same. "Darling, you don't ever have to be shy again. All the pain and fear that made you shy, they're not yours anymore. You're a new person, with no reason to be bashful." Her words lifted a monumental weight from my shoulders. I realized then that I was no longer bound by the limitations of the person I used to be. I was free. I could see my entire future unfolding in front of me. I kissed her this time. It felt right. Even if it meant I was now a mother? I felt comfortable in my body, even good. Lily whispered, "If we never get our bodies back, it wouldn't be so bad. As long as I have you." A warmth spread through me, especially in my chest and lower body. I took her hand in mine. "I feel the same way, sweetheart." In that moment, we both knew it was right. Everything was exactly as it should be. Love at first sight, Lily and Remy, Remy and Lily. We walked out hand in hand, eager to embrace the thrill of new love. From that moment on, we would never be alone again. After all, when you truly love someone, does it really matter what body you're in? No. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.